The streets of Los Angeles were a tapestry of life's extremes. Luxury cars zipped past clusters of tents, designer stores loomed over panhandlers, and dreams shared the same streets as despair. It was in this juxtaposed chaos that Tom Wheeler sat, his battered saxophone case open before him. The case was empty except for a few crumpled bills and coins that barely amounted to breakfast. His sign, written on a piece of cardboard he'd scavenged from a dumpster, read, "Need help." God bless. Tom's hollow eyes followed the crowd, scanning for anyone who might look sympathetic. Most hurried past, faces turned away, their eyes glued to their phones. His stomach growled, the pangs of hunger gnawing at him. He glanced at the diner across the street where the smell of fresh coffee and bacon teased his senses. And that's when he saw him. The man had a familiar face, chiseled with age, his silver hair peeking out from under a worn cowboy hat. He wore a leather jacket and moved with a slow, deliberate gait, a confidence that made him seem out of place amidst the chaos of the street. Clint Eastwood? Tom muttered under his breath. He couldn't believe his eyes. As Clint exited the diner, coffee in hand, Tom couldn't hold back. "Hey, mister," he called, his voice raspy. "Can you spare $1?" Clint stopped in his tracks and turned. His sharp eyes locked onto Tom, and for a moment the world seemed to pause. Clint approached, his boots clicking softly against the pavement. He looked down at Tom, his expression unreadable. "$1?" he repeated, his gravelly voice carrying a weight that made Tom sit up straighter. Tom nodded, feeling a sudden wave of self-consciousness. "Yeah, just $1. Enough to grab some coffee or maybe a sandwich." Clint reached into his pocket, pulling out a crisp bill. But instead of handing it over, he held it between his fingers and asked, "What'll you do if I give you this?" Tom blinked. I just said coffee or food." Clint crouched down, leveling his gaze with Tom's. "Tell you what," he said. "I'll give you this $1 if you tell me how you ended up here." Tom hesitated, unsure if this was some kind of trick. But the dollar dangled between Clint's fingers, and his stomach's protests were louder than his pride. I used to be a musician," Tom began, his voice shaky. "Played saxophone, jazz mostly. Used to tour small clubs up and down the coast. Nothing big, but it was enough." Clint tilted his head, listening intently. "What happened?" Tom sighed, the weight of years pressing down on him. "Life happened. My wife, Grace, she got sick. Cancer. We couldn't afford the treatment, even with insurance. I sold everything, my car, my instruments, even our wedding rings, to pay for it. But it wasn't enough. She didn't make it." He paused, his eyes glistening. "After that, I couldn't play, couldn't even look at my saxophone without thinking of her. I started drinking, then other things. Lost the apartment. Lost everything." Clint studied him, his face unreadable. "So now you sit here, hoping for scraps." Tom bristled at the bluntness, but nodded. "Yeah, pretty much." Clint leaned back, still holding the $1. "You're better than this, kid. You know that, right?" Tom let out a bitter laugh. "Better? Maybe once, but not anymore." Clint's eyes narrowed. "How do you know? You ever try to climb out of this hole, or are you just sitting there waiting for someone to do it for you?" Tom felt a flicker of anger. "What do you know about it? You think it's that easy? You think $1 is going to fix my life?" Clint smirked, standing up and slipping the dollar back into his pocket. "Nope, but maybe this will." Clint handed Tom a business card. It was simple, just a name, a number, and the words, "Second Chances." "What's this?" Tom asked, squinting at the card. "A lifeline," Clint said. "Call that number. Tell them Clint sent you. They'll help you get clean, get back on your feet." Tom stared at the card, disbelief written across his face. "Why would you do this for me?" Clint shrugged. "Because someone once did it for me." Tom's jaw dropped. "You, Clint Eastwood, homeless?" Clint chuckled. "Not homeless, but I've been down. Everyone needs a hand sometimes." Tom looked back at the card, then at Clint. "I don't know if I can do this." Clint leaned in, his voice low but firm. "You can. The question is, will you?" Tom made the call. It wasn't easy. The rehabilitation program was grueling, and there were days when he wanted to give up. But Clint's words echoed in his mind. "You're better than this." After months of hard work, Tom emerged sober and determined. He reconnected with his love for music, practicing on a borrowed saxophone at the program's community center. One day, Clint visited unannounced. He listened to Tom play, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "You've still got it," Clint said. Tom grinned. "Thanks to you." Clint shook his head. "Nah, you did this. I just gave you a push." With Clint's help, Tom got a gig at a small jazz club. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. Night after night, he poured his heart into his music, his soul finally at peace. Word spread about the homeless man who had turned his life around. Soon, Tom was playing bigger venues, his story inspiring others. At his first major concert, he spotted Clint in the audience. Tom paused, his hands trembling on the saxophone. "This one's for the man who believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself," he said into the mic. "Clint Eastwood, this is for you." He played a soulful melody, the kind that brought tears to eyes and hope to hearts. Years later, Tom started his own foundation to help homeless musicians get back on their feet. At the entrance of the foundation's building hung a plaque that read, "All it takes is $1 and one chance." Tom never forgot Clint's kindness. And every time someone asked how he turned his life around, he smiled and said, "It started with $1, but it was never about the money." Years later, Tom stood on the grand stage of a packed auditorium. The crowd erupted in applause as he concluded his final song of the night, a hauntingly beautiful melody that had become his signature piece, "The Dollar Exchange." "Thank you," Tom said, his voice steady yet emotional. "Before I go, I want to share something with you all. Years ago, I was broken, homeless and hopeless. But one act of kindness changed my life forever. It wasn't about the money. It was about the belief that I could be more." He paused, scanning the faces in the audience. "Tonight, I dedicate this performance to the man who gave me that belief, Clint Eastwood. Thank you for reminding me that everyone deserves a second chance." As the crowd rose to its feet in a standing ovation, Tom's eyes glistened. He knew his journey wasn't just about his own redemption. It was proof that no matter how far you fall, there's always a way back. Thank you for reading The Dollar Exchange. If this story inspired you, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Tailcraft, for more compelling stories like this one. Join our growing community where we share tales of redemption, mystery, and unforgettable human connections.